Hello, everybody. My name is Mila, and today, with the Thrill of Rights, we are going to be looking at the Chicano Civil Rights Movement. Social, economic, cultural, and political change was widespread in the 1960s, fueled by evolving norms, breaking traditions, and protesting inequality at all levels of society. The Hispanic community embarked on a social movement aimed at combating institutional racism, increasing cultural leadership and dominance, and establishing equal labor and political rights. The main leaders and personalities of this movement were Cesar Chavez, Corky Gonzalez, Reyes Lopez Tijerina, José Ángel Gutiérrez, and Dolores Huerta. Cesar Chavez was a civil rights leader, a Latino and farm labor activist, a community organizer, a social entrepreneur, and a crusader for the environment and consumer rights. Throughout his youth and into adulthood, Cesar traveled the migrant streams throughout California, laboring in the fields, orchards, and vineyards where he was exposed to the hardships and injustices of farm worker life. Corky Gonzalez was a boxer, writer, and Chicano activist. He founded the organization Crusade for Justice. He wrote a famous poem, Yo Soy Joaquin, which became a bright idea in the Chicano movement and has been quoted in protest literature, published in plays, and reprinted in several editions. Reyes Lopez Tijerina led an armed takeover of a New Mexico courthouse in the name of land rights for disenfranchised Spanish-speaking locals. This small-scale raid surprisingly thrust Tijerina and his cause into the national spotlight, catalyzing an entire generation of activists. He provided a compelling and militant alternative to the nonviolence of Cesar Chavez. José Ángel Gutiérrez stands out as an important leader of the Chicano movement. When he was still in grade school, his father died, and young José was forced to work in the fields to help support his family. Despite facing such hardships early in his life, José organized the Mexican American population through a new political party, La Raza Unida. From these positions of power, Gutierrez and other Mexican American leaders enacted changes in the school system, including the introduction of bilingual and bicultural education programs and improved relations. Co-founder of the United Farm Workers Association, Dolores Clara Fernandez Huerta is one of the most influential labor activists of the 20th century and a leader of the Chicano Civil Rights Movement. Her parents divorced when Huerta was 3 years old, and her mother moved to Stockton, California with her children. Huerta's grandfather helped raise Huerta and her two brothers while her mother juggled jobs as a waitress and cannery worker until she could buy a small hotel and restaurant. She grew up to later found the Agricultural Workers Association and co-founded the Stockton chapter of the Community Service Organization. The timeline. In 1947, the pivotal federal court case Mendez versus Westminster brought an end to school segregation in California and supported later civil rights struggles to end all segregation nationally. The ruling established equal access to public schools for 9-year-old Sylvia Mendez and generations of Hispanic and other children. Also occurring in the same year of 1947, the Community Service Organization was founded as a civil rights advocacy group. This organization helped to register thousands of Mexican Americans and drive them to polling places on election days. Political participation made the Hispanic community a powerful voting bloc in national elections. 1965 marked the beginning of the famous grape strike in California's Central Valley. This was led by Cesar Chavez, Dolores Huerta, and the farm workers to demand wage and benefit increases along with better working conditions. In 1968, there were several walkouts from schools in East Los Angeles. The East Los Angeles walkouts represented a call to action for civil rights and access to education for the Latino youth in the city. Among the students' concerns were classes that omitted Hispanic history, a lack of bilingual teachers, and a system that steered Chicano students to vocational training rather than college prep classes. The walkouts had no immediate change for the education of Hispanic students, but it did display the growing importance of the Chicano movement. As the 1960s progressed and the war in Vietnam intensified, broad anti-war sentiment grew in Hispanic communities. A disproportionate number of Latino draftees were sent overseas, and many were opposed to the conduct of the war. On August 29, 1970, in East Los Angeles, more than 30,000 people marched in protest against the Vietnam War as part of the National Chicano Moratorium movement. This national coalition was one of the largest Mexican-American anti-war demonstrations, including the Brown Berets and student activists, who expressed lament over the disproportionate number of Mexican-American troops drafted and killed or injured during the Vietnam War. This powerful movement was seen as a threat, which meant that it came with heavy state surveillance and police brutality. During this peaceful demonstration, things quickly went sour. The owner of the Green Mill liquor store called the Los Angeles Sheriff's Department over the fear that a few demonstrators who came in for cold beverages were planning on looting the store. Brutality ensued as 1,500 police officers arrived at Laguna Park, shooting tear gas canisters into the crowd and beating protesters. Local police tried to break up the gathering, and when gunshots were fired, fights broke out, leaving 4 people dead and dozens more injured. In conclusion, many of the issues of Hispanic American rights are as familiar to us today as they were in the 1960s. The legacy of El Movimiento has empowered many in the Hispanic community to become civically active and take part in national conversations. Those in the fight for Chicano civil rights wanted freedom in America, a life without systemic racism, and to finally achieve equal rights. After many decades of fighting for equality, the people of the Chicano Civil Rights Movement needed their community and support from one another in order to truly feel free. Thanks for watching!